Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything's Been Done podcast, conversations in cycling and subculture. I'm your host, Dustin Klein. Today's episode is brought to you by the Everything's Been Done Gear Shop. Just recently added to the Everything's Been Done Gear Shop are DCO, Disruptive Commotion Overlay, face masks, face covering, health protectors, civilization builders. Yes, the new camo DCO face covers are available now on the Everything's Been Done Gear Shop, the greatest place on the internet. Today's guest is an accomplished artist, a master of lettering, and a dabbler in many subcultures. You can find him on Instagram at Ornamental Conifer. Please join me in welcoming Nicolai Sclater. Well, and then what about how all the subcultures are, like, they're all kind of similar?
They are kind of similar.
And then I really like what you're saying, that they, in a sense, it sounds like they're kind of incestuous in their own way.
Yeah. It's quite easy to imagine that if you, as a cyclist, live your life as a cyclist, there's a high percentage chance that you're going to also enjoy climbing or being outdoors or cooking on a campfire. So it's like that's where you can cross over all these little things easily within one subculture. But then they're also going to be like, oh, but I also like going for like motorcycle rides. So they're interested in all of those hobbies. And as am I. So I go between them all. But I barely scratch the surface of either of them. That's the problem.
Okay, so that's where it's interesting. I'm like super, when I'm into something, it's like super intense about it. And I'll get kind of blinders to a fault where I won't really like look at other subcultures as much. Like climbing, I know absolutely nothing about climbing because it just doesn't like pull to me. So it's just like whatever. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. It just, there's something about that like tunnel vision of, maybe this is me being blinded by my perspective, but it seems like people that are core in a culture tend to kind of stay in that culture. I see that in skate
100%. But so when I've been explaining to people who I was doing a podcast with, I would say Dustin Klein, and they would be like, oh, okay, who's that? And then I'd say, he's a core element because I guess I became aware of you in the early 2000s. Maybe or like when I was like looking at watching MASH and just kind of like getting into that whole world and Cadence, and I was like, oh, so I've known your name for a long time, but then my friends who are I've been beside for the last 10 years and we have very similar interests and stuff, were like, oh, but I've never heard of this guy before because it was a niche little thing. I used to go to Brick Lane Bikes. I would get this little funny magazine and look through it and see cool little pictures of dudes doing stuff, and I was like, okay, this is something interesting. So I don't know where that tangent's going, but ultimately I guess I kind of I knew you from back then, but that's a little niche thing.
I love the tangents. More of those.
All right.
Okay, so where did you grow up?
I grew up. So I was born in England. On the south coast of England, and then I moved to the south coast of Wales. Well, not the south coast, but the southern portion of Wales, and lived in a very rural area. And then I moved to Cambridge, and then I moved to London. But there's my parents are extremely liberal, and they were quite free-spirited, so we traveled a lot and moved around a lot. And I guess there was. They kind of nailed it with giving me a completely rural countryside upbringing from 5 to 13.
Oh, interesting.
Where anything is possible and you're a kid of the fields kind of dreaming and loving life. And then you get to 13, you're like, but I want to go to cinemas and I want to go and have a remote control car and drive it around in the car park. And you wanted, I guess, a more of an urban scenario. So we moved to Cambridge at that point, which is, it's a university city. It looks like Hogwarts in a way. It's like an extremely beautiful, very, very old city where everybody cycles. It's like the kind of Amsterdam of the UK.
Oh,
everyone is on bikes. And I lived there until I was 18, and then I moved to London.
And then I'm always curious, like, what things were you into when you were like a teenager? Like, what kind of sports or musics or cultures? Like,
So, I mean, BMX was probably the first thing. Like, BMX was the thing that, when I think of my first ever memory, it was getting grounded for cycling to my friend's house. And I recently just got this little 16-inch BMX. And I don't know how old I was. I imagine I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I cycled 2 miles out of my village through it on a country lane to my friend's house.
whoa.
And when I arrived there, I mean, it was like a 16-inch BMX with like tiny, short little cranks and everything, and it must have taken me a while. But I arrived there, and my friend's mum instantly called my parents and was just like, "What the hell? Nico just arrived on a bike. Like, what's he doing cycling over here?" So my parents came and picked me up, and that was the first time I ever got grounded. Like, I don't think I ever got grounded ever again, in fact. But it was like I got in trouble. So I lived in Wales. And had that kind of lifestyle and BMX was, I guess, I wasn't aware of freestyle.
Okay.
It wasn't a thing. It was just like, I guess the only thing I understood about BMX was ET.
Yeah.
So I'd seen the guys on ET, and I was like, oh, I live in the countryside. We have little hills everywhere. So I'd start exploring and riding around with my friends. And then I guess I picked up a magazine at a friend's house.
Oh, cool.
That was called Rad, and it was a skateboarding magazine, and I saw all these wooden structures and stuff, and there was pictures of BMXs in there too. So then every time we would go shopping in a town, I'd ask my parents to see if there was a skate park in the town, and there was no internet or anything then, so we'd go to tourism, like information booths within the city, and ask for skate parks. So yeah, BMX has been there since day one, and then I guess, I mean, I was heavily involved in graffiti throughout my teenage years, and a lot of kids were as well. But I got to a point where, I guess I was like, I took it quite seriously, and
as people do.
Yeah, but I painted with some really amazing painters, and I was always extremely subpar. Like, the nerves always got the better of me, and I could dream up these wonderful pieces, but ultimately I'm pretty embarrassed actually. Like, I was pretty terrible because I was always so nervous, but it was the thrill of it. And I spent a lot of time going out at night and painting trains and having fun and kind of being a mischievous little fence climber.
Did you have like a mentor at all in the graffiti world?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, because
you have mentors, but there's a specific way, and I don't know if I was like raised as a graffiti writer in the same way that others do, but you have like elders, basically. You have people who know their way around and know. I mean, I guess they keep you motivated. They keep you awake because they're like, you go to these older people's houses and they have a lifestyle of an older person, and you're just watching and kind of staying with them, and then at 2 a.m. you go out. They've been drinking the whole time. I'm just sitting there like hanging out, waiting to like do something. And then you go out and they show you, and then they take your paint, and there's like a sort of tax because they take the paint and say,
"Oh shit,
you stand dog," and then you have to stand and watch out for them. But then you graduate, and it's funny. Then you eventually start becoming someone who goes and paints themselves.
But would those guys ever show you like
no,
techniques?
It was never technical.
It was
no,
more
you
like
were always 100% expected to learn your own hand style and kind of get your own thing, and that only comes through experience. It wasn't when I was painting. There wasn't like legal walls. There was walls that the city would turn a blind eye to.
Mm-hmm.
But then every now and then, if they felt like clamping down on the graffiti that was appearing in the city, for instance, they would go to these little rural places that we were known to go and paint, like old disused train tunnels, and they would come and arrest you. So then a couple of times after being arrested, it's actually not a very fun and pleasant thing. And, I'm still a teenager at that point, so my parents are having to come and collect me from the cell. And, you feel like you've let them down, and everything gets a bit sketchy. So.
Yeah, the lifestyle of graffiti is like super ill. It's super unhealthy. It's like... Yeah. It's kind of like a lot of people outside of it, I don't think, understand how it's kind of like fucked up. I mean, I guess the whole thing is fucked up, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about the reason I did it. I can't speak for everybody, but there was like, I've always enjoyed solitude, but I guess I like to be lonely with other people. Like you need a small. I couldn't fit into the like major overall groups, even though I dabbled much in the same way I work now. I would dabble between them all, so I was like popular enough to like be able to speak to, or not popular, but capable enough to speak
Cool.
to multiple different groups of people. But I was never. I never had the confidence to build upon that. So I would just like jump around. And a graffiti community, those people, I mean, I shouldn't speak generally, but like we're kind of insular people. You're doing it for yourself. It's a very self-motivated thing. And you're only trying to speak to this other very small handful of people that you're hanging out with. You're not trying to convince the 50-year-old woman who lives in the neighborhood who hates graffiti. You're not trying to convince her that graffiti is cool.
Right.
And that's not your motive. You're there to have a little mini competition with all your friends and gain a status. It's like kind of like a pack of wolves. It's like, where do you sit in this group? And I was just like way down at the bottom. But I was persistent, and that gets you places.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up going to like a university or anything like that?
I did, yeah. So I left school when I was 15 years old, and when all my friends went off to like college and then ultimately university, I just worked and rode BMX still. I was like, that was probably the crescendo. That was like a big time for me for BMX. It was like at 15, I left school, and I kind of left under bad terms, and my dad still blows my mind. But my dad found out, and my parents had to come down to the school, and the teacher, the head teacher, was explaining why I was having to leave the school, and I remember my mum standing up and saying something, and standing up for me, right? Standing up in the teacher and saying something to him, and him saying, well, if he was raised by you, no wonder he turned out like this. Anyway, so we all walk out of the school, and Nico's life begins at 15, and I'm like, all right, what are we going to do now? Kind of freaking out, thinking I'm in loads of trouble. And I was in trouble. I definitely got into trouble. My parents, explained the severity of what was happening and everything, and the reasons this will have implications in the future. But they also focused on the fact that I was enjoying BMX, and I was having a lot of time spent going to skate parks and jams. Never really competed, but it was always prominent jams, and I had a network of people there, and they said, well, you're good at this thing, so let's put you into this. And my dad bought me a brand new BMX.
Wow. So
I upgraded from it was a GT Performer at the time. I had a GT Performer, and then he upgraded me to a Heavy Tools Ruler. Wow. And it was a legit kind of model up proper BMX. And so then I basically poured my heart into that until I was about 17 or 18, and lived in a van, and sort of not in a van, but traveled around couching,
tour kind of stuff.
Surfing.
Yeah.
Sleeping in vans overnight at jams and stuff. And then then I realized I kind of wanted to maybe go to art school, because I was still painting the whole time, and I had made little zines and
I was going to ask you that.
T-shirts and stuff, and quite embarrassingly, my little kind of brand name then was Freelance.
Oh, sick.
Freelance zine,
yeah.
Freelance T-shirt. I used to paint people's BMXs for them, and mainly just paint their forks, but because it was easier. I didn't want to do any masking on bottom brackets and stuff.
Oh yeah, or taking the whole bike apart. And
yeah,
then you're just young,
Proper stuff back then. It was big old ratchets and 44 tooth check-rings, and everything was dirty and oily, and it was, it's not like now. BMX is now clinical.
Actually, I think it's kind of funny how I see this through a lot of people, when they're in their teenage years and even younger, a lot of the things that kids do, they kind of end up doing throughout their lives, and at more professional levels, because we grow up and we have all this experience. But you ever kind of trip on that? Like making zines, different cultures, painting bikes. I'm like, it sounds like what you're doing right now.
I do. I think that there's like, especially now that, so I've only just recently found out, recently, 26 weeks ago, we're having our first baby. So that's enough to make me think, all right, now you've got to start being an adult. And because I'm doing exactly what I used to do when I was 14, 15 years old, minus some of the like self-destructive stuff, but all of the creative stuff, it is the same. And sometimes it makes you question whether or not, like, have I just made it an easy life for myself? Is there another option? Should I go out and do something else? And my gut says no.
Great, good.
But when you look around and you see your friends, I guess, who have got this other entirely different lifestyle, it's like, wow, it's quite shocking that I'm still doing what I'm doing at 14.
Yeah, but I think I think you're doing like exactly what you need to be doing. I almost want to say you're more in tune with what you should be doing than maybe someone else who has like material wealth, but like just.
No, I'm not talking about material wealth because like I'm not specifically talking about that. I'm saying I think it's more in the sense that's like, although this isn't my hobby, and the reason I don't get full on in these different like subcultures we were talking about before is because the thing that you have tunnel vision for, which is clearly cycling, the thing I have tunnel vision for is painting. And
right.
That is the main thing. So it drags me between all these different subcultures, but every day, that's all I can think about. And that kind of, I wouldn't call it a hobby, but when people say, oh, make your hobby your job and you'll never work a life in your day.
No, that's right. No, you had it.
What I think the problem is then you don't have the escape. So you're creating art on a deadline continuously for commercial clients. It makes it very difficult to then make any work for yourself personally, and you need that. You need to find that balance, because otherwise your art will start to stagnate. And I think you need to have the ability to go between clients and have pause periods where you can develop new ideas, new techniques, experiment with things. And if you don't have that, then your work just becomes repetitive and it just feels like a job. So the opposite idea of that would be if I was to become a groundskeeper, for instance, driving around on a lawnmower, pruning trees and enjoying an outside lifestyle. So something that I've always been accustomed to as a child, just being outside.
Right.
And then on my weekends, because my life is a little less stressful, I can actually paint for myself, because I rarely paint for myself.
So even nowadays you rarely paint for yourself?
Everything comes from me. So
sure.
Clients never dictate what I'm painting. So it is all for myself, and I have a sense of ownership over everything, but it's all transactional. So non-transactional art that I create for myself is few and far between, maybe 3 or 4 pieces a year that I would keep.
And then do you have like a drive to make more? I love the term non-transactional. Wow, okay, this gets interesting. Do you feel like there's a pull to make more non-transactional work, like personal work for yourself?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and almost like you're kind of wanting to push other things aside to prioritize that a bit.
Yeah.
And then within the experience, the time experience of making that personal work, in your head, are you thinking like finished pieces, or are you just thinking this chunk of time to just that's just like free make time? So it's just like an hour, a day, a month that I just can do whatever I want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a finished product to it.
I think there's a bit of both. I think that the one thing that I can't adapt to is the allocating of 1 hour here and there. It's not like
for sure.
I need that time for experimenting. I need the time to develop the concept in the first place.
Okay.
So I need freedom from responsibility to be able to go and find the idea wherever that comes. Like, it could be riding a bike or having a bath. So
interesting.
that's one freedom I would look for.
Okay, wait. I want to interrupt you for a second. So, couldn't you find so you're saying that the idea, the concept, the seed to the personal work, you find it in all these different things. Couldn't you just let those seeds come to you through daily life, doing whatever you're doing, and then like note them down as they like?
I guess that's how I function currently, and I have a curiosity as to whether the concepts would have more validity if I paused to let them kind of gestate a little longer. It's like you can pull a seed. You can pull a seed out of the ground quite early and eat it. If you leave it longer, it will ultimately become a larger piece of fruit. So I'm like, you can eat a sunflower seed, but let's see if we can grow the sunflower. Like, I would love to be allowed to find the time to develop a concept to the level of a sunflower.
How does that look? Like, I'm lightly lost in the metaphor.
Alaska.
Say again?
Escaping to Alaska. It'd be cool to have like a studio retreat in Alaska, but
yeah, or
father, that's not going to happen anytime soon, ever.
Yeah, like it sounds like an artist in residency would be like really healthy for you.
Yeah,
or something
cool. But then I'm also a creature of comfort. I couldn't do an artist residency because I would need to take everything I live with. Mm-hmm. I just need to pause the earth. If I could pause the earth and keep my loved ones unpaused, that would be the perfect scenario. Because I can't work if I'm switched off from my wife or life, and I have email anxiety. I need to stay on top of emails.
Totally.
Text anxiety. Clients think that they can contact you via text.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like it's a perfect world. The client thing would probably be part of that pause. You'd be like, that's over there. Then you can just focus on these projects. I am still curious is it about the finished piece, or is it about the focus of, like, to be able to focus on I guess we could say a body of work that is just, maybe it's just purely from you, or it's not tied to commerce. Is it that there's no expectation? Like, what's the draw of...
But the only reason my work is tied to commerce is because of the paycheck. There is no control aesthetically. Like, people only ever... My client list is probably a little more trimmed down than others. Like, I've been working commercially, I guess, for 10 years or so. So mine might be a little shorter than others because I turn away work if they're trying to dictate a style.
That's awesome.
So I've only ever made my stuff. So the only tie to it is the money. So if we took the money away, then we create a new problem. Like, where am I getting the money from? But what comes with the money is deadlines. So what I really just want to get rid of is deadlines and have the money. But I have pieces. Sorry. So trying to say something.
Yeah, no.
I was going to just finish off by saying I have pieces that have sat in my studio for almost 2 years before I finished them.
Okay.
That creates a sense of anxiety and guilt that I owe someone something.
So, is it the deadline? Does the deadline help or hurt?
It hurts.
But then if you don't have a deadline?
It takes 2 years.
Or maybe never?
Yeah, maybe never. Sometimes never. Actually, yeah, sometimes never, which is bad. But I've become a little more conscious of the times that it has become never. And I've now upped my productivity levels so that I am finishing pieces and still getting them out, even though they sometimes come out a little later. And my justification is, if I look at my work 2 years ago, I believe I've progressed. So ultimately, they're getting something better than they would have done.
Oh, wait. Just because... Oh, I almost don't understand this.
Well, it's more... I guess it's more finessed.
Is it just because you're doing... It's basically the volume thing. Like, producing it is... It's almost like putting another brick in the wall opposed to just never producing it, because then you're never putting the time and the focus into making work, so you can't build off of it. Is that... comprehended?
It's kind of that, and I think also just as time goes by, I learn new techniques. Like the type of painting that I do is very specific to techniques that are considered more industrial.
Sure.
Like there
Enamel.
are processes. Yeah, enamel paints and solvent-based paints.
They're used to being like touched and used.
They have to be resilient to a lot more.
Yeah.
So, like, I do create flat work for homes and canvases and whatnot, and it's like it is very pleasurable to make those. But typically, my work appears on objects, and those objects get used. So you have to take that into consideration, and that is part of what I enjoy. It's like a multi-layered process. So there is the design element, but then there's also the kind of like the anal OCD planning of every stage. And only up until recently have I believed that I'm actually at a place where my stuff is pretty solid. There are things that I painted in 2015 that are probably a little worn out by now.
As far as like longevity or whatever?
Yeah, general usage. You know, like you can imagine if you paint your bike and you don't clear coat it and then your knees are rubbing on the top tube every day, that's eventually going to wear away.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, even if it's clear coat too, it depends on the scenario.
Yeah, or if you're wearing jeans. But then also if you're riding in jeans, you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in the summer especially.
Yeah. I mean, for me it was always worse because I lived in London where it rains all the time. Right. So that seam on the inside, everyone gets selvage jeans and they want this cool dark indigo blue thing, and then the seam on the inside, you take your trousers off after the rain and your entire legs are blue.
Blue legs.
Yeah. Not easy to get rid of either.
Yeah, and then some of that shit doesn't stretch too, which is fucking brutal on a bike. Oh my god.
And but I can't actually wear stretchy stuff. I have something against it.
Yeah. I want to make like a comfort joke, like Nico versus comfort.
Yeah, I mean, I do wear bibs, but I wear them underneath.
Yeah.
Regular shorts.
Same.
It's body insecurities.
I mean, that one can go a bunch of ways because it's also like civilian looking. Like you don't have to. I don't know. It's. I wear overshorts all the time.
Yeah, I don't want to put myself onto others. I guess I can on there and I'm totally fine, but I also just don't want other people to have to deal with it. Like, I don't like it when guys wear sweatpants and they don't wear any underwear underneath, and you see this little thing, like, tapping around. Like, it's cool for him, but for me, it's not cool. It's the same reason I wear a mask, you know? Like, I'm wearing a mask to stop myself coming onto you.
Right, it's like protecting others.
I just feel a little like exposed, like you have to deal with this. I'm comfy. You can deal with it, and that's not fair.
That is hilarious.
Nothing against people who wear it.
Did you ever work in a sign painter shop?
No.
Wow. Did you ever want to?
I guess I was curious about it. What I did was I approached a couple of guys who were living in London. So, like, my story after school being, I left school at 15, spent this life as a BMX kind of bum, scooting around England, going to different skate parks and stuff.
See.
And then moving to London, I did a foundation degree. So I didn't have any qualifications. So I didn't have any degree, exams or anything. So getting into an art school was difficult, but I knew I wanted to get into an art school, but they were very strict and regimented about how you got in there. So I had to go to a smaller university on the outskirts of London where they did a thing called a foundation course, and you did a little bit of everything then. At the time, I was like really much more interested in architecture and really wanted to get into that stuff. I really liked drawing architecture. But that led me into a university degree, and I was going to do fine art. I went to this cool university, and it wasn't a pretentious London art school, but it was within London. And it felt to me like I was going through a massive obsession at 21 years old of the Bauhaus. And I went into this art school, and I was like, holy shit, I'm allowed to use the fine art studio, the woodworking studio, the screen printing studio, the reprographics center. Like, everything as a graphic design student. But if you're a fine art student, you're not allowed to go into the screen printing session unless it's part of your, semester curriculum.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to do graphic design. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like designing titles for TV. And I never used a computer. I didn't own one. And I got in there, and it was just like a full 3 years of just analog experience. And although some of my classmates were using computers predominantly, I was mixing with the tutors more because I was a mature student. I was 21, although that's not mature. It's still everyone else was 18.
Right.
I'd had a different path into it, so I'd kind of done all the partying.
Yeah.
Was in a relationship, didn't need to do that part of university, so I just was like full-on nerd alert, obsessed, and dove in. And the tutors recognized that, and these guys were all like practicing designers at the time. They weren't just people who'd been in academia their whole lives. So these guys were like, oh, this is cool. I make these art books, and we go to this art book fair in South London. You should join us. So then I started binding and like letterpress. This guy, Andy, taught me how to do all the old letterpress. And he had a Heidelberg machine still there. And then the screen printing guy called Andrew wasn't much older than me, but also like rode BMX and was like hanging out in the same part of East London. So he taught me all these screen printing techniques and stuff. And he was a technician there, so he'd let me in after hours. So I had this like really cool thing, and the briefs they're trying to present to you like a brief, like you're going to be creating this for a cell phone company. This is your marketing campaign. This is how you have to answer it and stuff. And everyone there was just using their computers and making vector posters, right? Mm-hmm. I would go into the woodworking studio and get a piece of wood, cut it out, screw some lights onto it, take it over to the screen printing studio, screen print it, take it into the photography studio, photograph it, print it out of the Reaper Graphics Center, take a photograph of myself holding it, and then present that as this like bus shelter campaign, for instance.
Sick.
And I guess that carried through all the way to my graduation show, and I did an exhibition, and I got a good degree, and people noticed at the graduation thing, so then I started getting job offers.
Oh wow.
But they weren't significant. It was always like, recognize your level. You're a junior designer. Do this, do that. So I had opportunities to then go and start working in places. And I quickly realized, like within a matter of months, like graduate and then summer month exploring this work industry that I'm getting into, graphic design. Everyone just sat in these like poncy, like annoying computer offices with like, an annoying beanbag for if you want to chill out.
Right.
And I turn up with my pencil case and a cutting mat, and they'd be like, what's that? And I'm like, well, this is how I make stuff. And they're like, why do you, like, your laptop's over there, like, send that PDF to that guy, and can you just cut that out? And then I'm like, oh, man, I really don't belong in this world.
Right.
So I rented, like, a large warehouse with a couple of friends and set up a design studio, as it were. It was just, I slept under my table, so it wasn't a design studio. To the rest of the world, it was a design studio. It's where the name Ornamental Conifer came from. It was, I didn't want to present myself as Nicolai Sclater. I felt like my spelling was awkward, but also I wanted to sort of present myself as a design studio. So I pretended that this was the name, and you were being signed off from a guy called Nico who works at Ornamental Conifer.
Love it.
And it was an ambiguous name that wasn't like directly related to any industry specifically, so I could send emails to anyone. I'd be like, hey, I'd love to do some type design for your magazine. And like we at Ornamental Conifer have a handful of people who can create analog type.
Dude, that's sick.
So yeah, that was kind of where it came from. And then how did this question start? We were talking just about
sign painter.
Okay, so that led me in hand-painted type for magazines. I was doing a lot of that. Then I started working.
Were you doing hand-painted type, like up to this point, or like kind of?
Well, this is just a continuation of graffiti. So I was terrible at drawing anything.
And I mean brush, I guess. But great point.
Yeah. So I was terrible at drawing my entire life, and I've always focused on lettering. So book covers were always the thing I drew. I never drew the illustrations. I draw the title of the comic book. So it was always like lettering was all I could do.
Wait, I got a question on the lettering. What is it that you love about lettering? Like,
I just want to make it. I want to say something. So my parents are both writers. My dad's a poet, and my mum's an author. And I've always, I grew up. You know, my favorite era of music is hip hop from '94 to '96, both in the UK and in America.
Sick.
More so in the UK because I could relate to the people rapping about standing at a bus shelter in the rain waiting to go to work. But there was a story. It was built upon a narrative, which is different now. So it was a narrative that had a punchline, and I really liked that. So that was really why I wanted to continue with lecturing. So I wanted to create visual punchlines for people.
Love it.
And it's, you know, I think that for me was just the natural kind of way to get into stuff was to learn lettering techniques. So sign painting, I noticed it because of people like Margaret Kilgallen and Stephen Powers. Like I was aware of the Beautiful Losers, and I saw them making stuff, and I'd suddenly tied these two things together and be like, hang on, I use spray cans for that stuff, or I draw it meticulously with like a Sharpie and a little pen. And I noticed sign painting through them. So then I was like, oh, I have access to this in my city. I wonder if I could go and find an old sign painter who would teach me, because there was nothing else available. It wasn't like nowadays there's all these like things happening, groups and classes and whatnot, but they're just replicating historical signage. There are very few of them, and there are some that I follow who I think are brilliant at modernizing it, but the majority of people are just kind of creating a pastiche of the past, and that's not what I was interested in at all. I wanted to modernize it.
Just like tattoo does. Both of those cultures do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just interesting.
Yeah, you look at the kind of, what was that guy's name? Sailor Jerry. Stuff, and how it's that is like in the sign painting world or within motorsports that we've got Ed Roth and Von Dutch.
Yeah.
And they do striping, and they have this sort of weirdo character, the rat think and everything like that. And there's a huge group of people who learn to sign paint because they want to keep creating that.
Interesting.
Which is fine, but that's not what I wanted to do. Right. I wanted to do something completely different. I was like, hey, have you guys seen the Bauhaus? These guys are really cool.
Right.
We should do some other stuff. So I did. I guess that's where I took it. And then the sign painters were like, nah, you know, we're not going to teach you. I believe it was just purely because they didn't want any competition at the time. It was very scarce, and there was a lot of new barber shops coming. Suddenly people had all these twizzly mustaches, and there was baristas everywhere, and everyone wanted a hand-painted sign. And these old guys were raking it in all of a sudden because the vinyl world had taken over during the 90s. It was early 2000, and all these dudes who were like old alcoholics were like, fuck no, I'm not teaching you how to be my competitor.
Right.
One of them who lived on a canal boat, and he used to paint canal boats. In England, all the canal boats have beautiful sign painting on them. He gave me a book.
Oh, sick.
So I learned
What was that? You remember?
No, I think it was probably just a guide to sign painting.
Totally. It's like a Xerox thing, like...
Yeah, it was a little like 9-inch by 9-inch, well-thumbed, soft back, very, you know, rudimentary photography, posed, everything, and like just,
cool.
He basically just told you what materials you needed, because I didn't know where to start. I had acrylics and spray paints and all this stuff. I didn't know about squirrel hair or ox hair and sable brushes and enamel and thinners and palettes and how you load your brush, because it's all those little techniques that people get screwed on when they start, because they're like, oh, I saw you using one shot and I got the brush and I went like this and I went like that, and it's like, well, first of all, that's the wrong brush. Second of all, you haven't loaded the brush correctly. Third, you need to thin it. Fourth, the surface needs to be prepped, and that's that kind of stuff I was saying about earlier. It's like the OCD kind of element of preparation and finish is what I've become more obsessed with as my career has developed.
Do you find yourself enjoying that prep work?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I also I sometimes kind of like farm it out to other people too.
Just based on time.
Based on time, but also experience. Like knowing that if something requires like a little more finesse than I can deliver, I'm willing to pay someone who's been doing it for years, rather than assuming I can do it. I'm good at one bit of it.
Right.
I'm only like mediocre at that. So I want to make sure that people who are spending money with me get something beautiful, and sometimes that requires asking for help.
Yeah, that's professional too, instead of just like, yeah, the product can suffer otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the book kind of got you going with just the fundamentals, and then from there you were able. Did you just start practicing it, like loading up, like, you know, horizontals, half circles, like the whole thing?
I mean, I think I learned quite rapidly just on the job. Like,
oh shit!
So the first ever sign I created was for my neighbor, and she was a hairstylist, and she'd seen that I was good at drawing stuff. We both lived in warehouses side by side, so there was a sense of community and socializing that occurred.
Sick.
And she would like hang out, and she would look at my drawing table and my studio and be like, "Oh, can you make me a sign?" And I said, "Sure." And I made it with, you know, acrylics and wood, and it was all terrible and whatnot. But it was at that point that I was starting to learn. I had the book at that point, but I hadn't managed to get hold of the equipment. So I was like, I think I've got this. I understand the layout principle. I know that I get my jigsaw and I can cut this wood out, and then, you know, I draw this thing, and then I can transfer it onto a piece of paper because, you know, rub the back of it with my pencil, and then I transfer my pencil drawing onto a piece of paper, and I just follow the lines. Smoke a joint, follow the lines. That's all I did. And then I ended up marrying that woman.
Shit.
We got into a relationship and I married her. But the work was consistent from day one, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And so many people, I undersold myself massively. I think people were aware of the fact I was clueless, but were like, this is a cheaper option, which is a bad way to conduct business, because these other old guys who could have taken the work, you know, I feel I shouldn't have done that. But I also just wasn't confident enough to know what I should have charged, because they'd never told me. Like, I asked to be an apprentice to multiple people, an apprentice, like an unpaid apprentice.
Yes.
But they said no.
No. Yeah.
So I just went out there and started offering my services, and it was through word of mouth. And I would end up painting these signs, and I'd be learning, and like a sign that would take a professional like half a day would take me 5 days.
Right.
I'd be back there every day in the snow with my ladder, like getting up there and finishing little bits off.
Wow.
So it just kind of went on, and I learned on the job. And I think that it's been that way ever since. Like, I'm only just learning now properly how to clear coat stuff 10 years later.
Wait, you wouldn't necessarily, would you have clear coated those signs?
I mean, I think probably some of them would have needed a little more finish than I would have done. So not clear coat with an automotive, like 2-part solvent-based clear coat, but at least a yacht varnish. Like the chances are I was finishing stuff with, you know, interior gloss or interior matte water-based urethane.
Oh,
you know,
that
kind of thing.
So this wasn't enamel at this point.
It was enamel, but it's more about the flex of the wood. So there was different pieces of wood, and I was screwing bits of wood onto metal awnings, and, you know, just I was making the signs as well. I wasn't just turning up and painting onto stuff.
Got it. Like the whole thing. Yeah. Dude, and then you have to get into like anchoring shit into masonry and oh my God. Cantilevered things. Oh my God.
I had no idea what I was doing, but I winged it and I gave it a go, and it was a lucrative career for a 24-year-old. It was fun.
Yeah, which is perfect too, because essentially you were paid to learn, which is the way to do it, instead of paying to learn. Yeah.
I mean, I still paid to learn. I still owe the government in the UK quite a lot of money
for school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I maxed out on everything. You know, I was like, I asked for it all because my parents weren't in a position to help, and I was adamant that I wanted to do this thing, and I was like, all right, I guess I just take everything.
Well, it sounds like you did the best version, like you interacted with university like better than most people, because you were like older and like hungry to learn this stuff, trying all the different, it sounds like it literally just like rolled you right onto the path that you're on now.
No, I was really lucky with the resources that I had at hand, and I know that the university's changed now, and you look at other people's educations, specific schools have kind of just crumbled now. But yeah, it was really good being able to learn everything and have the freedom to like use it as your studio. That's where I learned about studio life, and I learned about motivation and productivity. And because the university is like, you could stay late, but you definitely were getting kicked out before 11 p.m. But you could get there at 6, and someone had opened up, you know, and you could like get in at 6 a.m. and sort of like help do some stuff, and then be printing at 7 a.m. And that's when a lot of my friends were just getting home, you know. They were like, whoa, man. And I was like, all right, peace, I'm going to go screen print like an edition of fucking sick posters. And then this evening when we all go to the pub together, I'm going to hand those things out. And it's going to be sick. And you're just going to be hungover. So right. Yeah. I was really motivated to work as hard as I could.
Which is also like kind of one of the magic elements to, you know, I guess I would say being an artist is you have to be self-motivated. Like you can't, there's no other way, because no one's, if you're waiting for teachers or assignments to force you into making something, it's like, where's the room for progression in that?
I know, there's a lot of people have a strangely negative idea, and they're like, oh, you're not a lazy artist. And like, if you know of an artist, if you know of them, they're not lazy. Like these people, there's a lot of work going on, and it's more than you imagine. So people come to my studio, or they see my, you know, my routine and see how consistently I'm working. And they're like, oh, wow, that's so impressive. I'm like, everyone is like this. Anyone that is capable of producing work has to put a lot of time in. And the idea of like, I lived in East London surrounded by trust fund kids who claim to be artists. And I'd be like, well, you know, what have you shown this year? Right. Or like, what are you working on? Or can I see your studio? And it was like, oh no, you know, I have this like weird horn I blow and I just do ketamine. And like, I'm like, yeah. You're not an artist. Right. So you've got to be motivated, and I like it. It just keeps it definitely. I enjoy being physical with my work. I enjoy feeling tired at the end of the day, but I keep kind of regular office hours, really. You know, like I'm in the studio at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., or I'm cycling to the studio. I make sure that I ride in every day, but I'm home by 6 or 7 and in bed by 9.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, similar schedule for me too. I mean, to me, it's about the consistency. Like, wacky hours, they like, it's not consistent. It like fucks you up. Like, I'm not gonna stay up super late and then get up and just like, it needs to be kind of regimented for it to. It's efficiency.
When you have a constant outpouring, if you are sporadic with your ideas and your motives, then I guess that's why you get those urges to like, oh man, this is happening right now. Like I'm feeling it. I have to put my time into it. But I guess I have such a backlog of ideas that I can't indulge in those moments, those sporadic moments of impulsive creation. I have to just be like, okay, well, this is just going to sadly get put to the back of the list, but I'll get there as long as I keep on this steady path. Like I do work through all of my ideas. Whereas some people who don't have many ideas and only get one a year, they're like, wow, 2 months solidly, I stayed up all night, every night, and focused on this thing and created it. And then the rest of the year, I took off and was just relaxing. Whereas I'm like consistent. I know that 365 days of the year, I will be making something off this list that I've created.
Is it like an actual list, or is it just like things floating in your head?
It's many actual lists. Like there are multiple versions of that list in different formats all over the place, but predominantly just, you know, scraps of paper lying around like this.
And is it just like ideas, or like, is it like finished things, or a mix of all of it?
It's ideas, it's like narratives, it's techniques, like coming out with techniques and being like, so use a sponge for this, then do a dry wet coat of a dry roller coat of this, then apply a wet coat, and like I write out the things. Because my work, I can't draw a technique, so I have to think about a technique literally and then write it out. So a lot of my lists are just weird, sort of like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I touched this with that.
Yeah, interesting. And then, are your lists, are they all like in one place, or is it like one's here, one's there?
All over the place.
Yeah.
I have a little pocket-sized sketchbook that I carry around in my pocket, and then one in my backpack, and then I just have stacks of like paper that sit around ready to be scribbled on. Recently, in the last 2 months since becoming a dad, I thought I should learn how to work spreadsheets. So I got a spreadsheet thing on my laptop, and now I put some of my notebooks into there. Then I put some notes in my phone. So like once or twice a month, I'll have like a review day, and I'll go back through. Sometimes I just write really long calendar invites of like something that I think is going to be really good, and I type it in my calendar, or I'll email it to myself. Like it's all over. It's in every single place. So then I'll have a day where I'll bring those all together and try and like finalize it and get it into a master list. And then there's like a whole wall up here full of smaller notes, and they're
refined.
They're the priorities.
Ah, okay. I like that. So that's a missing link for me, is to prioritize a day to consolidate all the ideas, and then you basically like filter them. 100, and then you're like, oh, there's actually like 3 good ones in here.
Yeah.
And then those you'll put up on like, that is a fucking good tip.
But you also need to go back through, so don't discard the ones at the time were bad ideas. You need to once or twice a year. Like I'm currently in an archiving stage. I've just got a storage unit, so I'm putting a lot of my stuff from my studio together and dating it and putting it into boxes and storing it. And I'm realizing that it's also extremely valuable to go through some of those discarded ideas, or mainly for me techniques, but going through them again. So I think you need to do a regular kind of cleanse of notes, and then once a year you need to have a real deep dive into just looking at everything. But that'll take you a week or 2.
That's a good point too. Interesting. Huh. So do you think that, does your, like if you had this magical moment to pause stuff or just whatever, making personal work for you, does it look completely different than like a commercial work?
I think so. I think I want to be a little more sculptural with my stuff.
Awesome. Totally. Like a different medium, like just like a chance to just try different things.
Well, I like applying my work onto objects, which is why I learned about these different, like enamel is perfect to put onto glass, onto ceramic, onto brick, onto plastic. So that's why I learned how to use enamel. I like spray paint because, I learned you could paint trains with these things. You can cover in like enormous surfaces. Cars the same, longevity. So I think that I still will use all of the same paint techniques that I use, but I want to apply them onto surfaces that I create.
That's cool.
I would love to be able to form large pieces of fiberglass, like my version of, I guess set making, when they make the large sort of scenes. Like I want to create large, it's very important. I think my work is seen in scale, so it doesn't always work in a photograph, and it doesn't work when it's kind of drawn down to a screen size, because they're on like 3D convex surfaces. You need to be able to walk around them, and I would love to present work that was the same, anamorphous volume as a car, but it wasn't a car.
Right, and that's exactly what I keep thinking is like vehicle, like big size, 3-dimensional, like.
If you imagined a car was an inflatable, and you kept blowing it and blowing it and blowing it, I would like to paint it at the point just before that inflatable popped. So it still had similar proportions to the car. You could still kind of see a resemblance, but it was at its extreme before it actually became a flat object. So I would like to paint something, I would like to be able to make something like that out of fiberglass, carbon fiber, aluminium, something. But I don't have the capabilities of doing that.
Yeah, and then that totally gets into this whole other tool set, knowledge base, space, which is fine, but that, I know you understand the ramifications.
That's why I'm learning how to pass off some of for instance, the last 2 years, I've learned how to pass off prep and finish to other people if I'm looking for a specific quality. Maybe I just need to start working with somebody who is able to create those things, but I don't even have the time to develop the idea to ask them. Like if I'm going to ask them to make something, I can't rely on them just to know what I'm talking about. I have to somehow physically model that and show it to them. And I'm not a computer-based guy, so I can't do it on there. I would have to make a small maquette of sorts and then pass it to them and be like, scale this up in bronze.
Fuck, that's so sick.
So I can't do that. It's difficult.
Huh. I noticed that, I don't know if this is always true, but you don't use a maul stick. You're like
I think it's because I'm left-handed. I don't know if that's true, but I feel like it always caused a big problem because the paint is wet on the left-hand side. So if you go from one direction
you're
to the
like
other,
in it.
Right? So if you paint, normally you would paint and you would write, from the left to the right.
Right.
And as a left-handed person, it means you're always leaving a wet piece of paint behind you. And a maul stick, holding it on your right hand, it would touch it there. But anyone who's ever watched me paint, I predominantly paint from the back of the word to the front end.
Oh, that's genius. That's the way to do it.
Because I'm like, well, this isn't going to touch anything. But the stroke and the motion that the maul stick allows you to exaggerate only really works if you're going that way.
Oh, interesting.
So you hold it, and the kick of the brush comes from the angle that you're holding your wrist at, and it will kick up to the right much better than it would kick up to the left. So if I'm working backwards, it causes a problem. So I created a tripod system where my two pinkies touch the surface, and then I hold the brush here. So then I've got stability like that.
That's tight. Well, and
you put your two thumbs together like that, and then you hold your brush in this hand like that. You got a brush, and then these two pinkies touch the surface. And you've got 3 points on the surface at all times, and you can.
Oh, yeah.
You still have to be careful with smudging things.
Smudging is Huh? That's you don't need any other. Oh, I forgot my fucking that one's cool because it's like. Hopefully, you always have your hands.
Yep. Yeah.
Here, I gotta see. I made a list of notes. Oh, do you have a car?
I do have a car, yeah.
Did you paint? Have you painted it?
No. No, I have a 1995 Range Rover.
Why not something? Like a little something?
Nah, I don't really tend to paint my own stuff.
Why? Why not?
I don't know. I'm going to paint my bike. I've just got a new bike that I'm going to paint. I just gave it over to Hearn from manufacturing to do a little bit of carbon work on it. But I'm going to paint that.
How are you going to... Is it going to be brush or spray?
A mixture.
Oh, cool.
Probably more spray. I'm just trying... I've only ever painted one bike before. I've painted a lot of bikes, but really I've only ever painted one. And I love it so much, I just want to recreate it.
The one that you did?
Yeah, the one I did, and I gave it to somebody. And then it was a job. I gave it back to them. I didn't just give it to them.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, ownership on my work. They didn't have any say in it. So to me, it's my bike, and I'm just giving it to them.
And they leave this nice little pile of paper for you, which is never hurts.
Yeah. But no, I haven't painted my own car. I painted my own motorcycle.
I've seen that. That thing's bonkers. Yeah. I actually didn't know that you painted that, but I assumed it. So I just confirmed that. Yeah.
I've had a couple of bikes that I've painted and leather jackets and stuff, but no, my I guess I'm just a little more incognito now. I used to wear Hawaiian shirts. Now I just wear black t-shirts. And it's like I used to want people to look at me. Now I'm like, no.
Don't look at me.
Leave me alone.
What kind of bike did you get that you're gonna paint?
It's a Cervelo Aspera.
And is that, I don't know that model, is a road frame?
A gravel bike.
Oh, it is gravel. Oh, sick.
Yeah. It's their gravel bike.
Sick. What size tires you got sitting over there?
650Bs. Oh, no, those ones are 700Cs.
Oh, what's going on? What's going on with Cervelo?
The one on the Cervelo is going to be 650B.
How big?
I don't know yet. So I ride 38s on my bike on my Cannondale, and then these are 40s, and I like 40s. And then I was like, well, what's the point? Why did I get 650B wheels to run 40s on them? Like, I got to go bigger.
Bigger, right.
But I don't know. I'm new to this, man. Like, 38 was a stretch for me. I was like,
I know.
Wow, look how chunky this guy is.
I know.
I don't know. I'm probably going to end up with 2-inch tires or something.
Yeah. I actually think that like a 45 to a 47 is like a kind of a nice, it really depends on what you ride, like what the terrain is.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 70% road and 30% gravel, and that's the thing. It's such a disproportionate amount of gravel because I live in Los Angeles and there's so much around, but I have to ride, I only get allocated slots to ride in. Right. So it's not like long time. So what I do is I exploit the fact that I can cycle to work. I only live 10 miles away from my studio.
Oh, that's perfect.
I can cycle to work every day.
Yeah, that's great.
But then that means I'm riding straight up Venice Boulevard. That's all it is. So the 38 is pretty good because the potholes are shit.
Right.
But then if I do go on a trail, like up in the canyons or whatever, they can handle it.
Yeah.
Enough, as long as it's just a fire road. But I really want to go, there's a ride I want to do, so, and also I like little chubby tires.
Yeah.
Little 650B chubby tires. I just like plunge them out on them. Yeah.
And it's fun to just try all the different, like, see how this feels with this pressure and these tires and like.
Yeah, I've never done it before, so I'm doing it out of curiosity. Whether it lasts or not, I like the fact that I keep it. I might just end up running 700Cs.
Which is, I mean, that's the best part is you can, in that sense, yeah, you have a 40, which is like a perfect kind of small, big size, and you could go, so you have this range, and then the 700s, I don't know scientifically if this is true, but I think they're faster because they're bigger wheels.
I mean, the speed difference, though, with someone of my ability is not like noticeable enough for it to be like something that I take into consideration.
No, just how it feels. Like it just feels faster.
I've only ever ridden 650Bs on my friends' bikes where I'm like, oh, can I have a quick go on your bike and like done a little circle around the car park. So I don't really know how it feels. So I don't know yet. Right now, my heart is in 700Cs, but for all I know, it's like that time difference of like, whoa, maybe my commute is 35 seconds longer is not going to bum me out.
That would be an interesting experiment. You could like average your time over like a week or something, and then.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's definitely, this entire build is being driven by aesthetics.
Oh, that's cool.
So
will you paint
whether it's practical or not, I don't know.
Will you paint the wheels too, or just the front? Like, are you gonna do a whole?
I don't think so. I was talking to a guy about this the other day. I don't think I will. I'm building I have a track bike built by Adam Eldridge from Stanridge Cycles.
Sick.
And he put carbon wheels on that, so I've got like a 5-spoke on the front and a full disc on the back, and those are painted for sure. But I haven't completed that. Sorry, Adam, but it will happen. That bike I painted, but in terms of the wheels I'm going to run on the Cervelo, I think that I'm not comfortable with painted rims yet. I'm not sure about how my work can be applied to them in a way that will add to the bike rather than detract. I think that my main focus is on frame and fork at the moment.
I mean, bikes are such a fucking pain in the ass. These like small round surfaces with like other things in them. Oh.
I mean, when you look at bikes that have, it's just too easy to all black components, painted frame and forks. Like, that's a very easy way to make your paint job look good. But then, it's my bike. I want it to look good, so maybe I'll just do that. But at the same time, when you look at people who have painted their stands, and like there's guys at Squid Bikes, they're mind blowing. They have a really cool approach to painting, and I really enjoy that. So I don't know where I sit because I've only ever painted one, and I would like to paint a few more to know where I feel. And maybe I will end up painting wheels. As it stands, I don't think I will.
I mean, they're just hard. It's hard because this fucking it's really spray is like the easiest thing to do, and it's still hard with spray because it's this goddamn like. That's why I was thinking like painting cars. I'm sure there's a ton of little things in there, but it's kind of these like big surfaces, which seems like really nice. Yeah,
that's what I want to create. These big anamorphic, gelatinous shapes that are just like and bulbous. Bicycles are all like. They're like your science teacher that's got the really like chiseled cheekbones and jawline and a spiky little nose and some sharp glasses. And you're like, fuck, that's what a bike is. It's really sharp and raw. Even though, you get softer ones, but they're just so angular, so angular.
Now I'm thinking about like if you had like your amorphous project, because with a lot of the not even this is not. I was going to say with the cars that I've seen recently, like it's not brands. It is like a lot of messages and things, which is so fucking sick. Yeah. So the amorphous stuff, you think it would kind of have like message-based things to it?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, that's all I can. That's really all I can do. The messages.
That's all I can do.
that's like the messages are like going back to why did you start making paintings that were based around lettering in the first place.
Right.
Just like, I have things to say. And in the recent years, I've been repeating what I want to say.
Which is okay.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. And because no one's listening. So I keep saying the same thing. It's my view on the world. And but I present it in a way that it catches your eye because it looks like it's authentically motorsport.
Yes.
It looks like vinyl. It looks like it belongs in the right place. And it looks like it's sponsorship.
Right.
It draws people in because not everyone is ready to read a placard. Like not everyone wants to look at photos from a protest.
Right.
They think it's too political. So then my cars capture an audience that maybe isn't paying enough attention.
Interesting. I like that. It's like subversive. Yeah.
But anyway, I've gone into like motorcycles, cars, things that are predominantly quite masculine and tried to break that down and get rid of this kind of macho culture and the idea that like burying your head in the sand for the sake of the sport is the best option. Like everyone should be conscious of what is going on politically. It doesn't have to affect their sport, but it should be represented in there somewhere.
Right. Yeah, and awareness of it, consciousness.
It happens in music and art, so it should happen in sport too.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I totally thought that so say you have like a car project or a project of some form. I'm assuming you're doing like a mock-ups before you dive into this, or you just fucking head in the deep end?
I just sort of, I need the object there. So I used like 1/4-inch blue 3M vinyl blue tape. And I map out areas that you look at. So whether it's a helmet, a motorcycle, a car, I map out areas that I feel need something. And alongside that, I'll have like a visual kind of assets package of stuff that's going along, stuff that I've been painting recently, a current kind of aesthetic that I'm exploring. And I'll work out how to apply those things. Like a recent project, I've been obsessed with flames. Before it was like folded arrows. Yes. Pieces of paper that look like they're popping off, but like I get obsessed with an icon or a symbol.
Love it.
And then that dictates an entire kind of graphic language based around that. So how the logos are made and how the different lettering is presented and all my statements appear in this specific way. I have that idea, and then I look at the object, and then I look at the spaces that allow me to apply those sort of
interesting
creations that I have. Some of them are like extremely refined, and some of them are a little more like specific to the object I'm putting it onto. It's kind of site specific.
So you'll mask it off, and then are you drawing it on the object?
No, there's a lot of different processes. So some of it is, I rarely draw directly onto things like cars because the paint surfaces can get really damaged by using even the wax crayons that I would use on a helmet. So they're like a water-soluble pencil. So they're not wax, but they're a water-soluble pencil that can be removed from glass and stuff, called a stabilo.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there you can draw onto pretty much everything with those. Cars, it marks the paint.
Oh, it
so
does.
With cars, sometimes I had to project stuff. That's probably my last and least favorite way of doing it because, project 2D and these cars are curved. So most of the time what I do is I'll draw something and I'll scan it in and then I'll increase it on scale. So I have like a larger 24-inch by 150 feet little black and white blueprint printer that typically gets used on job sites for architects, like to show floor plans and stuff. And I use that, and so then I can cut it out and stick it up on the car and see if it looks right. And then I use a pounce wheel.
Yes.
Yeah, so a pounce
painter.
wheel, like a little stirrup with all the little spikes on it, and I use dust French chalk through it. So then when you remove it, it leaves the outline of what you wanted to draw on the car.
Totally.
Another option for smaller pieces, like some of my things that I paint are very small, and they're much harder to pounce. So then I'll just use a thing called a transfer paper. It's a wax-free transfer paper. This stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know that stuff.
Yeah, so I do it the way that I saw all my tattooists do it, rather than putting so this stuff has like a chalky side and then a smooth side. If you lay it chalk face up and you put your piece of paper down onto it and you trace what you want to transfer, it then puts it onto the piece of paper so you can put it onto the surface. Whereas what the box tells you to do is put the chalk face down onto the surface and then your hand smudges so much you get chalk everywhere.
Interesting.
Seamless way. It means there's one extra step to the process. So you, rather than just having your drawing and transferring it, you have to draw, pick up dust, and then trace it again. So you end up drawing the same thing 3 times.
Yeah. Right. Which actually, for the longest time, I used to think was just bullshit. Like, I don't want to draw something more than once. But it is, like, one of the most professional things you can do.
Yeah. And it definitely helps because it creates a muscle memory for your hand.
Right.
So when you're drawing it or if you're painting it with a brush, it might be only the second time you've ever done that. Whereas by the time you transferred it in that system, you've already done that process 5 times probably, and then you've repeated it and repeated it. So then when you brush it, your hand kind of knows where to go.
Yeah, it's like building yourself up for success in a sense, like little exercises.
That's the idea.
Huh. But so then when you're, like, if you're just starting off with a helmet or something, are you sketching, like, on a sketch pad to just, like, thumbnail the thing out?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that it seems almost necessary, but you never know. Everyone's got, like, such a different formula.
Yeah, it's always, it all, like, my sketches are very rudimentary, but they start as, the equivalent of a stick man drawing, like helmet. It's like kind of circle, and then there's going to be something that goes here, and then that develops bigger, and then there's usually a lot of annotations, just
cool,
just ideas.
Love it.
And that develops more into like me physically holding the object.
Yeah.
I rarely send anybody any ideas as they don't usually get to see, so I don't have to finesse it. I can just get into it.
Yeah, that's awesome, critical. Because
some people need to have renders. The different clients, the more you pay, the more they expect a render, and at that time, sometimes I work with other people to do renders. Sometimes let them deal with my pencil sketches.
Right, yeah, you're like, this is my rendering. Like, take it or leave it,
Yeah.
What about, how have you, so I'll call it filling the well, but, when we make things, we're always producing, but we need to input. And I'm just curious what you've been doing to do that recently, where it's like, museums aren't a thing right now. It's hard to go to, like, stores, like...
Yeah.
The fuck do you do? Like,
I mean, this is where I'm actually running on reserves, I guess. So I think that I am lucky enough to have 2 years backlog of ideas and projects that I should be working on.
oh,
So
sick.
since the lockdown, it was like, okay, well, now kick into gear this stuff. But the reality of my actual commercial job as an art director at Race Service meant that a lot of our quite large projects had to pivot and change into something online. So live events that we were planning had to suddenly become digital. So there has been a consistent workflow through Race Service that has not allowed me to like fully get into the making jigsaw puzzles and learning woodworking stuff that some people did during lockdown. My job kind of like amped up and became a lot more difficult because vendors weren't open. I couldn't get stuff delivered. I couldn't go and pick up materials from stores. Like everything suddenly was like extreme. But yeah, I think the outcome has been that I have learned yet another level of my productivity that I'm capable of.
Interesting. I hear that phrase a lot about people who just recently had kids. So you might get another level of this.
Well, maybe I'm just getting it early.
That's true.
I mean, it's extremely difficult for my wife to be pregnant in a pandemic. Like,
oh my God.
There's a lot of stuff going on with hospital visits and planning maternity leave and figuring out nurseries. And like, we've never bought a pushchair before, or like a, car seat or a cot or a crib. Like we don't know what these things are. We're having to choose them online, and that's obviously kind of annoying and weird for us. So there's been a lot of like that, and then I have to then switch into work mode. So
how often are you, or do you ever make things that are like not familiar for you, like things that are kind of uncomfortable because they're not familiar? Do you have like much of a practice of that, or like a relationship to that?
I mean, that goes back to the sort of time defined of experimentation. And I think that I'm lucky that I probably had 2 or 3 occasions like that in the last year.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty good. It is pretty good if you're having to work consistently. But the level of experimentation isn't to anything where it's developed enough to show anybody.
No. And I'm just more like trying new things is like, it's hard. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't, especially when we get good at like one thing, it's like, I want to try this other thing. And you're like, I suddenly like, I'm not good at this because I'm new to it. Yeah,
most of the stuff that I actually try out, because like going with the tunnel vision thing is like, I am trying out stuff like staying on top of my taxes, recycling more, and keeping the house organized. Like I have these other things that I'm like practicing because my workflow is just consistent and fun, and I get a lot out of it. But then there's all these other things that I know I need to practice more. Like I shouldn't be spending a weekend in the studio working this stuff out if like I can get a storage unit and organize my archive.
Yeah, or like life. That's life-work balance.
Yeah, and I enjoy life. Like I was always scared of becoming what I considered middle-aged, and now I'm here and I'm like, man, this is amazing. I go for a walk after dinner, and then I go to bed at 9 p.m. and I wake up and I feel really good. And then I'm going to learn this new stretching technique. I'm going to go for a bicycle ride. Oh, lovely. Life is good. Like, actually, on the way to the studio, I better drop off my recycling. Oh, that's cool.
Totally.
Like, it feels good to do that. And then I know that work is consistent and art is there. And it's just always like turn up and I'm like, yay, now I'm in my safe place and I can just keep doing the stuff. But I've enjoyed going from this reckless kind of 20-year-old into a guy in his mid-30s who's like slowed down and just enjoying it.
Right, like now you going from like someone sprinting to someone, I don't know the term for like a marathon, like jogging, I guess.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, like rhythm.
And there's I think it's just a kind of coming to terms with an ego and an arrogance of your 20s and just being like this passionate, eager, over the top, kind of enthusiastic know-it-all, to just being like, hey, don't look at me anymore, man. This is cool. I found this really cool groove, and I'm just gonna like keep in this, and this is cool. Like Leave me alone. I'm not harming anybody. I'm just having a good time.
Do you use drugs or alcohol? Are those like part of your life at all?
Not really. I do drink, but I don't use drugs.
Like no cannabis?
No, I used to smoke a lot of weed, like a lot and that's back again in my 20s. But if I'm honest, it caused some issues with my relationship. My wife doesn't smoke weed.
Totally.
And like, I don't think I should hold anything back here either. I created a dependency on it that stopped me from traveling. So living in Europe where it wasn't accessible, there was still this kind of like slightly seedy undercurrent kind of thing going on, and you had to go and pick it up. And if you couldn't get hold of the guy, it was stressful. And someone said, hey, let's go on a trip to France. You're like, wow, where am I going to buy weed in France? I'll just stay here. So I kind of cleansed myself of that when I was about 27, 28. Before I moved to Australia, I was just like, yeah, I don't need to smoke weed.
Yeah, that's great. It's cool because you basically saw how it was like getting in the way. It wasn't helping.
Yeah, it was definitely getting in the way, and I wasn't aware of it until my wife pointed it out. And then moved to California, and it's like legal. So then it's like, okay, cool. Well, we can try this stuff recreationally. And then I realized it was a hindrance to certain levels of productivity for me. And I wasn't finding the same buzz as I used to have with it. And I was like, definitely had a reliance on it to create work in my 20s.
Interesting.
So like I needed to smoke weed and get into a zone. Now I find that through other avenues, and it's like just making sure I have a good breakfast and having like a nice dinner the night before and drinking enough water and exercising and having a beer, and like that is for me like so I can still function. Whereas like I feel like when you stop smoking weed and you start again, you're just like, oh, it's not very good for you. My tolerance has got extremely low.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then it affects everybody so differently too, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a party at my studio for a big collaboration, and it was the opening night. It was like 7 p.m. People were starting to come in, and the client was there too, who's also a friend, and he knows the story. But as a celebration, I took a toke on a friend of mine's joint, and I just wigged out, man. I had to go next door and like lie down for 3 hours, and was like super alert about what was going on. And it just because I was at such a heightened level of anxiety, and then my tolerance was so low, they were just like bad combination. But I could have drunk 12 beers and still been dancing around, and it wouldn't have affected me in that way. But one toke, and I used to smoke 3 grams a day when I was in London. It was like a completely different lifestyle, but tolerance, gone.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Huh. It does definitely it's almost like a flashlight in a dark room. Like cannabis is like, or a magnifying glass on like whatever the thing. So if you're like you said, you're already kind of amped up and anxious, and it just was like, crank the volume up.
Night for a show, bad idea. Unless you're a regular smoker. If you're a regular smoker, then it's the perfect thing to do. But if you're a rookie, you're a newfound rookie, and then you're like, all these people are coming to see my work, oh fuck, and then you're like a little bit nervous and anxious. If you smoke a joint, it's like, that was the wrong thing to do.
That's pretty
funny. But
funny.
it's fine, you know. I'm not anti-drug in any way. I've done a little bit of everything, and it's fun. I think I fully understand why they're necessary in the planet, and I'm not anti-drug whatsoever.
Right.
I'm just a little bit weaker now. I like going to bed early.
Yeah, I mean, the path does what it does, you know? Like, I totally understand. And I just think it's curious, too, to see how everyone interacts with it so differently, you know?
It still smells delicious. That's the thing. Living in Los Angeles, it's like taunts me every day. It smells
every day.
That's glorious.
Crazy. Yeah, that's what SF, when I lived in SF, I was a bike messenger there, and riding around the city, you would just smell weed everywhere, every day. It was like, this city is just high all the time.
But it's such a lovely smell. I love it.
I do agree with that, yeah.
My dad used to smoke weed, so I was like, I started smoking. I used to smoke weed, steal joints out of his ashtray when I was like 14 years old.
Did he ever smoke with you or offer it with you?
Yeah, we smoked together, But that was after I'd left home and everything. Like I'd go back to Christmas, and there was some funny times because in England it was the birth of skunk, which is you guys have got all these different strains. We used to just go to a guy and it was either hash or homegrown, which is just like kind of bushweed, or you'd get skunk, and skunk could be any form of thing. It might be an indica, it might be a sativa. You don't know what it was.
Right.
Just something that had little bits of purple hair in it, cost a lot more money, and had little crystals on it. And I started smoking that, and I'd share it with my dad, who was used to smoking hash from the 80s.
Interesting.
And he would wig out. And then he would go to bed and ask my mum to bring him a cup of tea and some biscuits, and he'd be all stoned upstairs, and I'd be like, oh man, I just got my dad really stoned, this is terrible. But then every time I'd go and visit him, he'd be like, hey, can you bring some of that skunk?
Oh, yeah.
I found out he was asking for it, so he had to come up with his own name, and he would call it Hooch.
Hooch.
Bring some of that Hooch with you. So yeah, he still smoked until he was probably like, I guess 60. He doesn't smoke weed anymore.
Yeah. Huh, that's cool. The family of stoners.
My mum didn't smoke weed. She quit when she had me. That's what she said.
I don't know. Maybe you kind of covered all the. Oh well, you basically said this is why you like lettering, but like you kind of don't make representational work. Like you kind of just stay in the. Is there like. Do you ever like even sketch people? Like, is it just?
Yeah, I do. They're really bad.
Oh, that's cool though.
I do. Every year or so, I attempt landscapes and I attempt figures. Wow. Yeah, it's consistently terrible.
I mean, it's not practiced.
It isn't practiced, and I'm the first person to admit that. And it's the same thing I say to my friends who say, "Oh, I can't draw." I'm like, that's because you haven't put any time into it, and you're probably discouraged as a child. If you put some time and effort, it's like you can't speak a certain language either. Learn it, and you'll be good at it. I do believe that. There are certain innate natural abilities that some people have, but everyone can draw something. Mm-hmm. Whether it's going to change the world or not is another story. But
that's a lot of pressure.
I do continuously try, but I also find that I end up breaking it down to something graphical always. It's always gets refined. Like I love Jeff McFettridge's work.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
He can draw figuratively, beautifully. Like you even see it. Sometimes he shares that kind of stuff with you. Like he can draw that. His proportions would be beautiful. But he chooses to put a style of work out where he's broken that line down to the simplest form for the most impact in a split second on a bus shelter. That's that drive past it, that was a human being kind of representation. So that's what I draw. I realize that I'm terrible at drawing figuratively. So then I break it down into something more graphical, and then that lives in my sketchbook. And I think, maybe one day I'll introduce a human to my work. I never do.
I like that, to breaking it down like graphically. It's almost like it's a cool way to understand the form, basically the figure, the pieces. Yeah,
it's just the shape. It's the shape we take up in space, and it's like what negative space do we create as a being, like in space? You can see that.
Yeah, but the human is like really complex. It's like a hand. There's like it goes. This way, and this way, and then it can go around, and it can be however it is in space with foreshortening and like.
Exactly. That's typically what we would term as graphics is 2D. It's flattened, so you can flatten that image. You don't have to foreshorten the thumb. You just give it all equal spacing, and you've just drawn a hand like that. If you try and draw a hand at this scale, then everyone's going to get it wrong because this thumb is the same proportion as this finger, and they haven't thought about the fact that this would be casting shadow on this finger. So it's like a graphic hand would be this or this. It's like flatten it. That's what I do. I flatten things, and then I bring in an added element of 3D of like another dimension by making that look like it's popping off a surface. So a flat drawing of a thumb with a hard 3D kind of cast shadow looks like it's a button of a thumb with a cast shadow. And then I'm like, why am I drawing these things? I gotta start to draw weird thumbs. buttons and stuff. So then I just go back to the words.
Huh, cool. Yeah, I think it's all so fascinating to me. Okay, I got two more and then I'll let you go.
Cool.
He keeps pulling out questions all over the place. The fuck, man. First, I saw on your Instagram feed the crazy little videos that you did. I don't know how long ago that was, like a couple of years maybe?
Yeah, like, well, probably 2015.
Dude, they're fucking sick. They were basically it was like a day in your life, all visual with no talking.
It's funny you say that because I just made a note today to make another one of those things. I did like it. I used to have a lot of fun. I just got a GoPro back then and like.
Oh, was it GoPro?
I like doing all the titles and making weird little things. But like, if I'm honest, the reason I didn't really pursue it is because I think I was very inspired by Van Neistat's videos that he was making for Tom Sachs, and I was like, oh, these are really awesome. And I was wanting to make a video, but didn't know how to make a video. So now the reason I haven't made a video since is because I knew I was just like replicating his stuff. So I was like, how do I find my own voice of that style? Like,
by just doing it more. I mean, that's those are just found references, inspiration. That's just foundation.
Yeah. No, every year I buy a new camera. Like I just bought a RX 7-100 or RX 107 or whatever it is. It's like the one with the flip up screen, and like every year I buy a new camera and then I make little things, but it still is just too. I haven't found a voice in video, so I don't know how to make a video.
This is interesting because, so how I feel like this is what you do too. No, this is insane. This is exactly what you do because this is what you did with sign painting. So how I interact with things that I want to make or that I want to be good at is I'll just start doing it and put it out there. Like I'm not going to build up this like inventory of something to be just right and then show the world. Like it's just volume. And this is great. This pulls into this other question too of like process or production over perfection. Like just make the work, and like perfect doesn't exist, and the more you make, the better it's going to get. Yeah.
I think that the difference now is that I am established, and at the beginning I wasn't established enough that someone could call me out. So it was like, this is just someone new and starting up, and if he's copying a traditional Victorian style of sign painting, we're not going to call him a faker. Whereas now it's like, I can't claim that style as my own, so I shouldn't be putting it out there as my own. Like I have to spend enough time creating videos myself. Like what is the point and the story I'm trying to tell of painting? And like there isn't really much interest there. Like a time lapse of me painting a car isn't very interesting. So like it's the moments in between that it's the storytelling, and it's the creating of the titles and the way that the door is lifted and the light and where I cut and everything, and all of that stuff it just keeps looking like Van Neistat stuff. It's like Tom Sachs's videos are like, I watch them all the time. Yeah. I always watch them. I love them, and I just like I can't rip off someone that I really admire. Dude,
it's going, no matter what, it's going to have your voice and your version on it. Like I would not trip on the fact that it looks like something else, but also we need to have something to reference off of. Like if that wasn't there, then like.
Like I said, I was sitting in the hospital this morning with my wife, and I made a note on my phone of that exact thing. I did a video for Soho Not So.
Yes.
It started with a cool little title with my phone on it, and I put my phone down on a yellow bit of paper, I type it, then it goes to a picture of me drawing this thing, and then I remove it, and it says my name. I'm like, damn, I was in a good mood then. That was like that. I would love to do that again. So yeah, watch this space. I'll try.
Watch this space.
I am trying.
And the other thing is, were those other ones, did you make them like, was it almost like a daily vlog format where you made that in the day that you did, because you started with a to-do list and then you would do the thing and knock it down. Was that actually one day of what you were doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it was just edited on my phone in iMovie. What I did was I bought this little thing.
Oh yeah, sick. Perfect. That's a
Not
very
that little thing, and
powerful tool.
I just it's a terrible, really crap one from 7-Eleven.
Yeah, yes.
And it's like really, it doesn't really bend or anything. Now it's covered in dust. It's a memento. But I used to strap that onto my motorcycle, or I'd like carry it into Staples and like video myself getting that ink cartridge. And I was like, this is really fun. But it was a lot of work.
That's what I was gonna get at. Is it's gnarly work.
Yeah.
You think it's like this quick and easy thing. It's like, that's a fucking project.
No, because you want to get the angle of me walking up to pick up the thing, and then you want to get the angle of me taking the thing. Then you want to get the angle of me walking away. So the guy at the counter, like standing at the checkout, is like, why is that guy picking up that ink cartridge 3 times and then putting it back in the shelf again and then moving around? And then you just feel like really insecure. And I was like, all right, see you guys. Thanks.
It's hard in public. Is really hard to do that. Yeah.
It like 2 or 3 times and then stopped.
But you have an amazing playland that you're in right now where you could do a ton of stuff that no one needs to see. You know what I mean? Like, so there's still ways to kind of, whatever.
Yeah,
please make more videos. They were
for the last 5 months I've been filming a lot of stuff about this car that I've just finished. So I have been filming a lot, but then I'm working with an editor.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And have you ever thought about like you say, what's there to watch about like painting a project? I mean, one thing that would be fascinating to me is just it's almost like journal entry, like visual, you know, like, oh, this thing is hard to get the stencil on, or this color's doing this thing, or that was awesome. Basically like your experience while it's happening would be great for a storyline, I would think. Because
I just don't. There's 2 things that I don't like: my voice, and I don't like the breaking concentration. So
that's real. But you could do that at the end of a day. Like you could figure out a formula where that could be.
You could do voiceovers.
In the morning, at the end, whenever, you know.
Voiceovers.
Voiceover, totally. Yeah.
I think it's more a reluctance to adapt, and also a fear to accept anything new that might slow down my progress. Because
it's real. That's super real.
That is something that would definitely hinder progress. And the other side to that is I'm aware of the fact that it also allows me to add value to some of my projects for certain clients, because some people are sending out entire production teams to film me do this stuff anyway, because they want the footage of it. But that's also one of the reasons I work at RaceSetter. So I have a team of people here. We have like 7 or 8 editors, and we have people who are extremely accomplished video directors, and then we have people who are extremely good cinematographers, and they've all got movies and red cameras. So if I need it, they're on my doorstep. I can ask them for favors, and I can work projects with them. But what always happens is the videos never look like the funny little ones I do on my phone. And that's what I would prefer to be putting out into the world, as funny little videos. Totally,
yeah.
Not super crisp, glossy ones.
Right. And isn't it? I feel like you had a phrase of process over perfection. Is that from you? Would you write that?
It sounds like something I would have said in like 2014 or 2015. Yeah.
But do you not feel?
I used to say it's a trade, not an art, also, but it's not an art form. I just need to get my computer charger.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't need to get my computer charger.
Well, whatever. We can just end it too if it's gonna die on us.
I've got 3% left.
Okay, let's just do it. Thanks so much.
Okay.
This was awesome. I don't know.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. You're like I said, I've been following your career for many years and seeing the different paths you've taken and how you've managed to accomplish something extremely significant. And each one of those, I feel, is an inspiration in the same way that I've jumped from industry to industry. It's like you have consistently created something worth looking at in every avenue. So I appreciate it. Your videography is as good as your clothing design, and is as good as your artwork, and as good as your graphic design. So
wow,
it's cool. I'm glad that I've met you properly.
Thank you. Just a little more.
No, that's
kidding.
it. That's all you paid me to say.
That was awesome. Thanks so much. I fucking that was great. It's so cool to hang out. I can't wait to hang out with you in real life.
Yeah, I mean, this is another thing when you meet cyclists who are clearly more accomplished than you. The natural thing would be like, come to Portland, we'll ride, and I'm like, that will never happen.
Yeah, but we could do whichever city that happens in. We can go for a ride. I cannot go crazy. Actually, that would be a funny video for us to do a ride.
Like a regular bike ride.
Or we could do that's a good...
Ride to work with me.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be sick.
Okay.
And congratulations on being a dad.
Thanks. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow. Thank you to Nico for spending his time with us, sharing his path, his process, and all the wonderful things that he does. If you're interested in seeing more from Nicolai, check him out, Ornamental Conifer on Instagram. He is literally, he is an amazing artist. He makes amazing things. He's painting cars and motorcycles and helmets. Your eyes will thank you. It's awesome. So the world thanks you, Nico. Thank you. If you'd like to hang out with me on Instagram, shameless self-promotion, check out Dustin Klein _.com/&/ Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Nothing but love. Goodbye.